Just gone 10 o'clock, so I think we'll get underway. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to all the board members and colleagues from the Staff Associations and trade unions and HMICS. So you're all very welcome, as well as colleagues that are presenting papers here today. Can I just remind everybody that the papers will have been read by board members, so if we could have brief introductions, and then I will turn to members for questions in the first instance, and then offer it open to our colleagues from the unions and the staff associations for any further observations that they would like to add. With that, we have one apology from today, which is Amina Khan, who unfortunately can't be here, but there are 4 board members here, so we're well quorate. So I'll move on to declarations of interest or connections. I haven't been advised of any notifications in advance of the meetings, but can I just check that no one has any declaration to make? I'm not seeing any hands, so I will take that as a no. Thank you, everybody. So if I can move on to 1.3, which is decisions taken since the last meeting of the committee. There haven't been any decisions taken, so we can move on from that one as well. So the next item is item 1.4, which is the public minute of the meeting held on the 2nd of June, and this is for approval. So I'll invite members to agree the draft. There's one slight amendment to page 2. There's a spelling error, which Debs has already flagged up, which we'll remedy. But is everyone else content with the minutes of the last meeting? Okay, thank you all. So that takes us to 1.5, which is the action log and matters arising. First of all, can I turn to members to see if they have any points that they want to raise on any of the actions? If not, I'll quickly go through a few. The first one on grievance data, it's proposed to close. I'm proposing that we don't close that one until the next meeting in December. I'm not sure that the paper 8 section 1.13 does actually reflect the question of a breakdown of cases by ethnicity. So I think the next Policing Together report will be coming to the committee in December, and we can look for that that particular piece of data at that particular point, if that's okay. The community engagement, just to say thank you very much. It's a really comprehensive report. We did ask for a schematic, but we've got a lot more. But I just want to emphasise that we really don't want to create work for officers. So, but thank you for the comprehensive nature of it. But a schematic is probably all that was needed. The only other ones that I think I need to flag, just quickly look, was the one on Your Voice Matters, which is on the last page. And I note the update. Thank you. Again, we will close this, but just to say that there isn't quite the information that we asked for in terms of organisational learning, corporate learning. I appreciate the good work that's been done at divisional level, but if we look to the Forensic Services report later in the agenda, it clearly identifies corporate action that's been taken in addition to teams undertaking their own work in response to the survey. So maybe we can just bear that in mind for the future. I'm not sure if there's anybody here that wants to pick up on that. Debs, I see you've got your hand up.
I'll let Barry pick up on that point, and then if I can come in after that, please.
Okay, thank you, Debs. Barry?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, totally recognise what you're saying there. just to give assurances that on the standing kind of reports we'll be bringing to people committee in the future, kind of corporate learning is absolutely critical in terms of the narrative we want to provide. In terms of the kitchen enablement at a local level, there's a lot of work going, sort of cohesive work with strategic HR leads, with local support supers, just to bring all that together, so that we are on top of the good practice, and I guess crucially so we can share it right across the organisation. I think that's really important. So we take it very seriously, and moving forward that'll be very prevalent in our updates so bring to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that there is a huge amount of work being undertaken in this area, so we're absolutely aware of that. I think what we would like to see, and I'm sure again though there will be work of this nature, is there will be common themes emerging across the divisions. So how is the organisation as a whole responding to that, and addressing them at a corporate level? But thank you, Barry. That's great. Debs, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just to, if you are agreeable to invite Dawn McLean to come in and provide a verbal update on Action 3 from the 25th of February meeting. We didn't get one submitted in advance of the meeting, so perhaps Dawn could give us a verbal update on that.
Thank you. Dawn.
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute there. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, it was just to say I had submitted a response, however, it had got lost in the ether. It was just to say the ask from the previous meeting was to bring a finalised report of the strategic plan from 24-27, but given that we've still got 6 months of that to go, my proposal would be that we bring that to the next meeting of the People Committee when we've got a finalised strategic plan overall report, and we'll also be bringing the new iteration of the Health and Safety Strategic Plan for 27-30 at the same time, so that it can be compared.
That sounds sensible. Thanks, Dawn. Yep, that's great. And we'll hear a wee bit more about some of this later on in your report as well, but that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
With those amendments, is everyone content to approve the action log? Okay, take that as a read. And final point 1.6 is the decision to take business in private. Can I get agreement that we'll take items 10 and 11 in private, and that'll just be for members only? Again, I'll take that as consensus. So, thank you. That takes us on to the first substantive item that we have, which is the Q1 report, HR overview report from the Director of HR. So, Caroline, I'll pass to you.
Morning, Chair, morning members, morning Staff Association, and good morning team colleagues. I hope everybody's well. Firstly, I wanted to start, Chair, with just an update on the work that myself and the team are doing on aligning and strengthening reporting, firstly to address the assurance of committee members, but also to make sure that all of our reporting is aligned with the Chief Constable's vision, and that to enable a thriving workforce. So everything that we are doing going forward will align to thriving workforce. And so if I start with that and I focus on the Q1 dashboard, as members are aware, this is a new way of reporting, and certainly we are continuing to refine that reporting. But the focus areas that I'd like to consider this morning are around capacity creation, because they are absolutely the strategic priority of the organisation under thriving workforce at the moment. And the first area is absence. So whilst absence has remained static at 7%, there are some significant variations across divisions and portfolios, and long-term absence continues to increase. We are taking action in terms of line management reporting, particularly around return to work, particularly around supporting line managers in terms of their development on having honest conversations with colleagues I think we all know that one of the most important things is about the development of our front line, and that's something that we're absolutely focused on. We're also focused on divisions and portfolios that have absence over 7%, and I've personally committed to
Caroline, could I
attending.
just interrupt for 1 minute? Your sound is a wee bit muffled. Is there any way that we could have that just tidied up a wee bit?
Let me log in and come back in.
No, that's better. I don't know what you've done, but that's even better, just what you've done there.
I apologise.
No, it's okay.
Let me just go back again just to repeat the
Thank
points
you.
that I was making. So focused on absence, particularly absence over 7%. I'm personally going to be attending people boards in divisions and portfolios to look at action plans for those divisions and really supporting those divisions. We are also working really hard on line management development around 101, making sure that due diligence is happening in terms of return to work interviews. And I'm confident that with additional focus, we will start to see a slow decrease in absence across portfolios and divisions. But this isn't just the only area that I want to focus on. I also want to draw out duty modifications. As I think members are aware, this is an area which is of significant importance. We've got just under 2,915 officers who are modified. And I should stress that this is for a variety of reasons. However, some of these reasons are permanently adjusted, which equates to around about 871 colleagues who are on permanent adjusted. And so what we are doing is really focusing on duty modification action plan. I'm going to ask my colleague Nikki Page just to come in at this point to give an update on the focused work that we're doing around governance and oversight and around root cause analysis.
Aye, thank you, and thank you, Chair. So, as members are aware, because we recently did a deep dive, we are doing a lot of work in this space just now. I think I can put it into 4 key areas. We've looked to strengthen governance and oversight. We've introduced attendance and health oversight meetings at a divisional level, and that's very much to kind of focus on those complex cases and ensure that we are taking them through the system completely supported. And that obviously reflects the point that Caroline made around those long-term absences that can be extremely complex. The duty modification prioritisation framework has expanded the panel remit to make sure that we are continually looking at improvement and development. We've also launched or are about to launch, because it's just in the latter stages of development, the end-to-end attendance support guidance that's associated with the consultative activity that we've been undertaking. Divisions have said the kind of off-ramps at different processes are difficult for us to understand in an end-to-end capacity. So what we've done is produced that to support that. We're also doing joint improvement work with Optima. We are looking at the access to work arrangements. We had previously a backlog in that space. We've not only removed that backlog, but we've got a focus in that space on improvement, and we've brought our timelines down considerably as a consequence of that, in terms of putting adjustments in that allow people to return to work. Caroline also mentioned work we're undertaking with analysis and performance and our ICT colleagues to try and understand our data. I think we members are very aware that we've got quite an old system, so our ability to kind of analyse that data is quite complex. So we're working with the experts to look at what else we can do and where the focus next should be to have maximum impact impact, and we've got a data and insights working group to progress that. So I think that's the kind of key areas of progress that I would highlight at this meeting, just in terms of attendance and duty modifications. But I'll stop there, Chair, because I'm conscious that there might be questions.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. Chair, I was just going to continue with capacity creation with the final area of focus, which is flexible working. So we've got circa 27% of flexible working arrangements across our population, which we know is higher than other police forces. And therefore, we've been doing a lot of focus work around why that is the case. Now, I should also remind the committee that we know flexible working is really, really important from an attraction and well-being perspective, and a very key component part of a thriving workforce. However, we also understand the need to create capacity, and therefore we have launched at the end of this month a flexible working toolkit that is again designed to support our line managers in terms of more difficult conversations, encouraging managers to consider the facts before agreeing to flexible working requests, and giving them the confidence to be able to make decisions against criteria. And so we've been rolling out that flexible working toolkit. We've been consulting with colleagues and with our staff associations over the last few weeks. And that would conclude my update in terms of priority areas on the people dashboard. What I would just like to finish on is, again, coming back to a thriving workforce. We know that creating capacity, we know that when colleagues are absent, that actually one of the most important things is around focusing on well-being. And I'll look to my colleague Damien Shannon later in the meeting to report around the work that we're trying to do proactively around well-being, because I know that that is absolutely significantly important as another area of focus around capacity creation.
Thank you. Thanks, Caroline, and thanks, Nikki. That's a useful update. Can I open it up to members then for questions? Paul.
Yeah, can I ask, the report says that it's 27% of employees that are working flexibly or under formal arrangements. What percentage of those are staff and what percentage of those are warranted officers?
Thanks, Paul. I'm just going to check if we've got that data available right now. Nikki, have we got that in front of us? If not, we'll just defer, Paul, and come back to you.
I don't have that in front of me. Sorry,
No,
if I'd known it was of interest, I would have brought it along.
No.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, apologies, Paul. Could we come back on that question?
Yes, please do.
Paul, just so you know, we will do, but your camera doesn't seem to be on, so just so you're aware.
Sorry about that. No, that's me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline and team. That's a really useful update, and there's actually a lot of sort of like positive things in there as well, which I know you haven't focused on, but there's some good movement in some of the indicators, which is really good to see. I did want to talk briefly about the long-term sick and the flexible working, because those are the two key things in there. And it's great to see the toolkits being provided for the frontline leaders in the organisation. We know our first and second line management of both police and police staff is a critical area for delivery, and we know we're very strong in those areas with the individuals that occupy those. So it's good to see we're supporting those with practical things. My question is, how can we be assured that the toolkit is actually being used and is going to be used, and it isn't just something that we're giving to already busy people and saying, get on with that? Because we're likely to find ourselves back here in 6 months asking the same question about why we've still got those stubborn levels and the interventions don't appear to have worked. And my second linked question to that is, do we have kind of a strategic menu of interventions that we are applying on a consistent basis to our long-term sick cohort? And does there then translate into a tactical menu that is part of the toolkit that managers can use to practically go through? And then the third question that I have, and then I'll be quiet, is kind of conflating the two a little bit. And there is a debate, isn't there, around what is the right level of flexible working arrangements for an organisation. And there's models that have been tried around the world in various different organisations in policing that have been very successful with very high levels of flexible working. And the ultimate answer is the public's interest has to be the first one before the individuals. But I suppose we consider the broader application of long-term sick people being afforded flexible working options in a way that might be able to speed their return to work. And I know there's possibly some tension and problems with that, and some issues, because if people are being refused flexible working and then colleagues who have been on long-term sick are getting it, then that potentially drives people into long-term sick so they can access flexible working. But it's not a perfect solution, but I just wondered if there's been any consideration of that, and if we think that might help. So 3 questions there. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Gary. I'll take the first one, and then I'll hand to Nikki, and we'll combine together to respond. So I think the first question was, how are we going to embed the flexible working toolkit? And it's a really good question. So I think the first thing is that we've taken considerable time in consulting with colleagues ahead of the launch of the toolkit. Secondly, we've aligned HR strategic leads and also HR advisors to support our leaders in terms of the flexible working toolkit. And then we've also put in place some milestones around evaluation. And along with that, we'll be reporting on progress through the quarterly dashboard. So those things combined together, Gary, give me confidence in terms of embedding, but I think the evaluation is really, really important. Nikki, are you okay to respond to the second part about long-term sick, and then the related part to flexible working?
Yeah, and I'll just also add the communication plan for the flexible working toolkit is far more developed than anything we've done in the past, and we've also got sort of educational inputs as well aligned to that. So hopefully that gives you assurance. Secondly, in terms of the strategic interventions in that tactical menu, these the kind of practical go through. So this is where that kind of end-to-end toolkit's coming into play around what is your off-ramp. Is it, for example, duty modifications panel to redeploy somebody? Is it taking somebody down a capability route? What is the route? The other component part of that is the end-to-end guidance will assist in that. But what we have done is we have rolled out a series of focus on sessions. So that's educational pieces to local line management. And we've had an amazing, and it's credit to the divisions, amazing uptake on people attending those sessions at the sergeant level particularly, which, as you rightly point out, is our most important level of management in terms of really cracking this nut. Really well attended. We've done attendance management, we've done duty modifications, and we are doing work just now so as that we can take forward learning on capability as well. So that is that framework. The educational pieces sit underneath that to ensure that we get support. And then the second layer to that is the attendance support meetings that I was talking about at that divisional level, where those complex cases are getting discussed, the learning from them taken forward, and the support. So it's a co-owned problem between HR and the local area to manage those difficult cases through the system, get people back into a good space, get them into a place where they are able to fully contribute with their adjustments as necessary, but they also get the right adjustments in place. So it's the kind of end-to-end process that we're looking at. So all of that is kind of coming together in that space for line management. And as I say, amazing engagement from sergeants, support supers, etc., to make that all work. And then finally, the question on flexible working. So we are due soon to launch our kind of hybrid working guidance, and we're really clear in that space. There is an absolute space for flexible working to get somebody returning to work into a good place and in that recuperative space. But actually the overall aim is always to move from recuperation into substantive duties that we absolutely know will create the capacity in the organisation, because long term not being able to be in a role that's going to add the capacity for the organisation is just not something we can sustain. And I appreciate that's not always the message that individuals might want to hear, but what we are doing in the end-to-end process seeks to do is ensure that everyone has got meaningful employment and budgeted establishment role, that they're supported to deliver that role they are in. And where that is not possible because there is not enough of the Office of Constable an individual can ultimately deliver against, it's how do we respectfully take them down a route to exit from the Office of Constable, maybe not the organisation, because we know that a lot of people can return in a civilian capacity, but that's the kind of end to end where we've got to get to, and it's ensuring we do that right and respectfully, considering the balance that we've got under our Equality Act duty in respect to disability fees, the duty to the public to ensure that we have the capacity to serve them. And that's what that whole process is about. So I hope that gives you some assurance.
Yeah, that's a really comprehensive answer. Thank you. And I think the key will be in seeing the evaluations of the toolkits, won't it? But I'm very happy with that answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. And David, I see your hand up, but I'm going to come to the members first, and then I'll come to you and your colleagues just in a minute or two, if that's okay. Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Caroline, Nikki, colleagues. It's a really helpful report. And Nikki, you rightly referred to the fact that we had a really helpful deep dive recently on duty modification and what you've added today in terms of assurance around process and governance, and a lot of activity in that space, a lot of work, a lot of inputs, if you like, and resource in terms of trying to crack the issue. And I know all of this relates to an improvement plan, ongoing improvement plan over the last 18 months ago, which predates my membership of this committee. I guess what I'm just trying to get a clearer handle on is that's all of that improvement in terms of process. Where are we trying to get to in terms of impact, and what does improvement actually look like in terms of the journey we're on? And that's what I feel less clear about.
So our duty modification plan ultimately seeks to do work in the prevent space. So our ideal is to prevent people getting modified in the first place through injury or reducing potentially ill health, be that mental well-being, be it physical well-being, whatever that is. So the first outcomes are around prevent, and as members will be aware from the work that we have done on developing some of our well-being, that's very much the space that is aimed at, and I know that the Health and Safety Committee have looked very closely at things like injury and duty, OST, and that to ensure that that isn't something that we have to deal with. You know, if we can prevent it in the first place, that's our ideal. Our second component part is that slowing it down. So what we are seeing from the data we've presented, obviously, is that slowdown is starting to happen, which is some cause for some optimism, but as we all know, you can never take your foot off the gas. Our next component part is the stabilise bit before we push into the increased capacity, and that will be aligned, as you would expect us to do, with the Policing for Our Communities model and the development of that to ensure that it's the right person, right place, right skills, that we have, we protect as far as possible the capacity in the front line. That's got to always be the priority as the service to the public. So that's what it's aimed at. And finally, that sustained improvement must be kept and maintained. So that's the kind of stages of our duty modification plan. And I think we've got ongoing work in all of those areas, and that's inevitably where we would anticipate seeing not just the slowdown in duty modifications, but the support and the building of capacity back into the front line. So hopefully that gives a wee bit of assurance in terms of the kind of process that we're following on that.
And Chris, just to add, I don't know whether your question was just aimed at duty modifications, but if it was aimed at the entirety of capacity creation, in the absence space, we're looking for a reduction overall in the financial year of 1%. So that's a target that we've got, but each individual division, as I've mentioned, we're working on action plans across that. And I just wanted to come back, Paul, to your question about the breakdown of flexible work. And of that percentage, it's 22% officers and 41% staff.
Sorry, 22% officers and 41% staff.
Yes.
That doesn't add up to 100, and it doesn't add up to the 27%. So I'm slightly perplexed at what that means. Because the 27% is staff of employees. So is it 22% of that 27% and 41% of that 27%? Who is the rest of it?
Sorry, it's so of the total population that we have,
yeah,
of those that are on flexible working arrangements, 22% are officers and 41% are staff.
So can I just clarify, it's 41% of the staff base of all staff will have some flexibility, 22% of all officers will have put in a flexible working request that's been accepted. So it's of each base. Hopefully that clarifies.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to confuse Paul.
No, I am actually mathematically literate, but that's why I'm so perplexed because of the way. Anyway, we're fine. Yeah, thanks.
And Paul, we'll make sure you're provided with that level of breakdown in future.
Thanks.
Paul, did you want to come in on something else?
I do, yes. Sorry, it was something else. I'm sorry, Chris. Carry on.
Sorry, Chris. I didn't realise you hadn't finished. Apologies.
Yeah, no. I just wanted. Sorry, Paul. Can I just come back, Chair? Just on Nikki and Caroline's response. So yeah. Thank you, Nikki. That's obviously helpful in terms of the journey and outcomes, hoped for outcomes on the journey. My question was about duty modification, but obviously it's kind of indivisible in the end in terms of the impact on capacity. So I appreciate your response, Caroline. And actually, it's apt in terms of my question because I'm trying to understand outcomes along the journey, but also clarity about the destination.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Paul, I'll bring you back in. I've got a few questions, and then David.
Just a quick one. 1.19. It makes reference to new employee relation cases falling by 58% or so compared to the previous quarter. Is there an explanation behind that? Is there something we've done differently, or?
So, Paul,
thanks, Paul. I'll hand over. I was going to hand over to Nikki on that, but apologies, Chair.
No, I was just going to say maybe Nikki could give a quick answer to this, but there is a report further on the agenda that we will be able to delve into case management in a bit more detail, so it might be worth holding on to that question
no problem.
Till then. Okay, thank you. Okay, so just I mean a lot of really good points. You've obviously picked up on a lot of the issues that the committee are prioritising, Caroline, and as you know, duty modification and sickness absence are definitely two of those. Just in reading through your report, and what you've said, which is you and Nikki, has been really useful. There's reference to support for frontline, training for frontline, toolkits for frontline and the like. So I'm just wondering, as in the duty modification improvement plan that came to committee last February, it's specified that all of these are connected. So, you know, the skill set that the frontline needs is important for all of these issues, whether it's duty modification, ill health, flexible working requests, and so on. So my question is, are we looking at this in the totality in terms of that training and learning that is needed for the frontline? And how is that being delivered on a holistic basis rather than a subject by subject basis? And my other part of that is, to what extent is learning, training, learning and development involved in this? And we'll have an update at the next committee from them, so it might be worth just thinking about it from your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's absolutely integral. So you're absolutely right. At the next meeting, we'll be given a comprehensive update. And just to reassure, we're looking at this in its absolute totality. So we're looking at the capacity for the development for our frontline and all of our leaders. And we're doing that in a just-in-time way, working really closely with our divisions and commanders. We're also looking at every aspect of development in terms of probationers once they've come through. We're looking at staff development, we're looking at broader leadership development. So I would prefer to bring a more comprehensive update on everything that we're doing, which starts primarily with making sure that all of our colleagues have very clear objectives, they understand their roles, then work through the organisation from a development perspective. We're doing work around career pathways. And so I'd like to bring all of that together to the committee at the appropriate point.
So I think we would definitely welcome that, recognising the importance that for some of our objectives to be addressed and progressed, there is a huge reliance on the front line. So the support, the development, the interventions that are provided to first line managers, supervisors, is something that I think would be of particular interest to the committee as we go forward. So thank you for that. David, you've been waiting patiently, so I'll bring you in now.
Chair, thank you very much, and I would wait all day. Thanks very much for having us at the meeting today. I'm here in place of Brian. I've just a couple of observations from reading through the paperwork, and some of them are no more than that. Some of them have been covered already. But my first observation was at point 1.8 in the document, where the report presents that we're talking about abstraction hours here at 3.26 million, driven principally by annual leave, training and absence. And I wondered what the committee's view was on effectively, grouping those three categories together. In my mind, they would seem absolutely independent, particularly absence. Annual leave and training, are almost planned for abstractions, and absences perhaps not. So that was my first thought out loud. The next part of that 1.8, when it speaks about reducing resilience on overtime, I was interested to read that, because the information that I have is that our reliance on overtime has not reduced whatsoever and is indeed increasing, which seems to be backed up by the next part, the next bullet point, which talks about a seasonal increase in re-rostered rest days. I would have the view that that rest day bank, or officers who have a significant number of rest days, would have to be treated as effectively overtime, or at the very least a financial risk to the organisation. So I just wondered what anyone thought about that. The point about that Paul made at the start was one that I had, but I think I'm going to reiterate it. The distinction that I think needs to be made between when information is presented, that it specifies whether it's police officers or police staff that we're discussing, because the distinction, certainly in my mind, and I've got no doubt in ASP's and Unison, is a really important one when we're trying to analyse and make quite a coherent response to anything that is presented to us. The point about return to work interviews, I know has been laboured. I almost see that by no means as a red herring, but if we're at the point where we are having a return to work interview with an officer or a member of staff, I assume, then clearly that period of absence has finished. And I wonder whether our focus should be equally, and I know that it is to some extent, on the prevention, and whether that return to work interview, the data that we get from that, does it have any quantitative meaning to the way that we're going to try and deliver what we're talking about here? And I will get there towards the end, I promise. The flexible working toolkit, I think this is definitely progress. We have to give people the information about how they can best manage their staff, and how we can, bring people back to the organisation quickly and effectively if that's appropriate. my concern, and I hear the word assurance and reassurance a lot. I am not reassured that that training has filtered down through, the operational front line. I heard what Nikki said, but I've specifically asked the question in preparation for this meeting, and I have a concern that our over-reliance on online training and almost, bespoke sessions where some people who might be available could go and undertake this training will miss out a huge tranche of people who at the front line are going to be the ones who are going to have the most impact on the numbers that we are talking about here, especially if it, if our target is going to be a 1% reduction in the number of people who are off sick. And the last point I promised, and it was one that Brian asked me to raise, the Vice Chair, was, and this is just his opinion, of course, but for consideration, the way that the information was presented for previous meetings in the sense that they had that dashboard, he found certainly much easier to read and understand, and again, to interpret what was taking part for these discussions. Chair, that is me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I suppose on the last point, this is a new approach rather than getting the huge amount of detail that we did the last time. We've asked for the HR director to come forward with a report that highlights the key areas, David. So I appreciate that this is a change to where we've been before, and I think where where we don't have the evidence that gives us that assurance that you mentioned, we need to dig a bit deeper and we need to ask for that to be presented. So I take your point as far as that's concerned. I think on some of the detailed questions that you're asking in terms of the presentation and so on, I'm assuming that you sit in various fora with the directorate in at various stages in the year, and I'm just wondering whether or not some of that can be picked up through those mechanisms, so that you are satisfied that the separation and the level of detail that you're getting and then subsequently is coming to the committee can be more aligned. So I'll maybe look to somebody to pick that up. I saw Nikki, she can nodding her head. So Nikki, can I just turn to you for a minute before I bring our colleague from Unison in?
So we spoke about the report yesterday, and the fact that Brian found further information. So I've got an action actually from the PODs yesterday to look at that and spend some time with the staff associations on that report, Chair. So hopefully that will assist.
Okay, so can I just ask then that Darren and Jackie are aware of that, so that our colleagues in SPA are cited, and then when we have our regular catch-ups with the Federation and other organisations, we can feed that into our discussions. Thank you. David.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a couple of observations from me on the paper at item 2. To go back to the total abstraction hours there, I think it's worth noting that's not just an absence figure, it reflects a combined pressure there. There's leave, training and absence. So that's pulling people away from the front line. And that has real workload consequences for those who are covering when that happens. Also seen from this that there's a real shift in the shape of the absence. I think that's notable. We're seeing short time absence fall for both officers and staff, though I speak for staff, but long-term absence is on the rise. It seems to be then we're getting fewer brief episodes of absence and a growing base of chronic and serious conditions. So Unison would be calling for investment in occupational health and I'm sure my officer colleagues will be looking at the duty modification capacity in terms of that to help with that. I've noted a couple of the points in the paper, and we've had a couple of moments where we've crossed. There's some stuff that crosses into sort of later items, but I think it's just worth observing that. So you have the 2-point fall in the flexible working approval rates, and it's consistent in what we're going to see in a later item 8, I believe, about the inconsistency in manager level decision. And there is also the fall in that employee relation cases, which Paul had alluded to there as well. I'm sure we'll get to item 8, but it is worth noting, here that it shows a broadly stable on-year picture, but really sort of presenting that quarterly isn't the full picture for that for me. And really, just to finish off, that rise in psychological disorder, the absence, you'll see that, and there's an IHR item as well, an item 3, seems to be a driver there of ill health retirement as well. We just thought these were trends worth sort of pulling out of the paper and noting. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, and I think that these are useful points, I have to say, and we will get an opportunity to explore those in a wee bit more detail as we go through some of the subsequent papers, so thank you for that. We'll keep those in mind. Caroline, I'll let you just come in and sum up on this.
Thank you. I just wanted to refer particularly to the point raised about training, and I absolutely accept that point that historically Police Scotland have absolutely used online training. What I would say is we're in a stage of change, and as with everything, all of these people issues, as you can see, to try to enable towards a thriving workforce, it's multifaceted. We can't just focus on one thing without the other, and training is the golden thread that runs through this, and hence the work that we're doing on embedding a different approach to training, which we'll obviously bring to the committee at a future date. So I just want to acknowledge that I absolutely accept what David has said. What I would say in the last period, we have been running far more face-to-face training, particularly with our first line and with commanders, and they've been in a just-in-time way in the way in which we've described through the focus on sessions. But I did just want to address that particular point, and then just to pick up on David's point, which I said at the very beginning, everything that we're doing here has an absolute focus on well-being. Ultimately, to enable a thriving workforce, we want our colleagues to be at work, we want them to be developed, and we want them to feel supported, and that's ultimately what we're aiming to do. And with the work that Damien is commencing on, and again, I talk commencing, I don't want anybody to think this is embedded. It's absolutely not. We're absolutely on a cultural journey that is all about prevention rather than reaction, which is perhaps where we have been to date.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. That's useful. And we recognise that it is definitely a journey, and there is a huge amount of activity underway. So thank you for the report. As I said, it is the first one of this, and as we all settle into this, then we'll get a better idea of what the committee is really looking for in terms of that assurance that David mentioned. I think just to reflect back on the committee priorities, it very much is the strategic workforce plan, duty modification, absence, and well-being. So those are the kind of key aspects that we would be looking for as we go forward. I think we're really keen, as you know, to see learning. So as you go through this improvement journey and this change journey, just understanding what the changes are, what the learning is, and whether there are any subsequent changes to practice, policy, or performance that we need to be alert to. So, but thank you, Caroline. I appreciate that this is the first report. Thanks, Nikki, too.
And
So
Chair, I do notice that Rob here has got his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see that, so I do apologise, Rob. I couldn't see that.
Not at all. Thanks very much, Chair. Just and it was just to say, and I think you've highlighted the usefulness of that report and some of the data within it. What I thought I would offer for members is a little bit of perspective around about what some of those numbers mean. So the figure of 2,915 officers modified is a figure that's larger than 28 of the Home Office forces in England and Wales. It's actually a figure that's 100 officers larger than the entirety of the British Transport Police. So these are colossal numbers we're talking about here, and a really significant challenge, and one which creates a lot of difficulties for the service, particularly at a time in the budget cycle while there's considerations being given going to government and asking for additional resources. You can understand how they may not be encouraged to provide those resources if the experience is that we break people and they end up undeployable and unable to carry out the full range of duties associated with the Office of Constable. So members might want to consider not just to consider the current picture, but how long it's taken us to get here and what the factors are. And I note in particular, this figure has surged since the pandemic. So there might be, some consideration of what changed then and why we've ended up in that position that we now are in, and how we create the conditions to reverse those trends. I note that the rate at which this is becoming worse has reduced slightly, but it hasn't plateaued, and it certainly hasn't got to a position where the trend is a reduction in these numbers, and that's should be of significant concern. I think for our part, there are some big components missing in terms of what I know that the Director of HR might want to see within an organisation that speak to its broader organisational health. A reliable and routinely completed appraisal for officers and staff, tenure in posts. These are all considerations that I think speak to some of the causal factors, and maybe the fact that we have prioritised tasks in a very difficult context around about our immediate response to pandemic, for example. And again, one of my observations would be, far be it from me to disagree, but actually we didn't typically use online training, or the surge in online training was also a response to the pandemic. And actually before the pandemic, we rarely used online training other than some from really basic compliance products. So getting us back to an investment in training, an investment in that, the kind of standard HR practices that you would hope to see in a healthy organisation, being the absolute glue that holds everything together. And I think once we get those sort of things in place, then maybe, again, over that longer term, we might seek to see a reversal of these figures. But, at the moment, they're a significant worry to I know, to the service and certainly to the association and our members.
Thanks, Rob. Some really useful points there. I think as far as the reliable appraisal, I think that is something that we'll probably come on to again in a later report, or when we get to the talent management one. And I absolutely agree with the focus on learning, training and development. So I think that when we get to December, it'll be a really timely discussion as regards your point about investment. We'll be going through the budget at that particular point, and we can take on board both your comments and the observations of officers and the learning that they're taking from the implementation of this improvement plan. So thank you. Caroline, I will come back very briefly to you, but I'm keen to move on as well. So
thank you. Thanks, Angela. It was just to respond very quickly to Rob. So absolutely, Rob. I don't want any member to think that we do not see capacity creation and duty modification as being absolutely critical. So that was the first point. The second point is we are progressing and we have a pilot ongoing at the moment in terms of what we're calling PDP. We're deliberately doing a pilot which includes divisions and portfolios, and then we will bring the outcome of that. So it's just again to reassure committee members. I think it's fair to say there is a significant amount of work going on in every part of our portfolio, and what we're trying to do is bring in terms of my report just a real focus on this occasion on the capacity creation elements. But absolutely, Rob, we've got something in train, but I'd rather bring the results of the pilot, the evaluation, and then the plan going forward to the committee in the future.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. Maybe at some point we could get a timeline for that, then that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so really good report. It stimulated a lot of conversation, which is great, and a few other actions that we'll take forward from that. As I mentioned at the previously, I won't go back through them and I do apologise to Rob for not seeing his hand going up. So thank you for that. And this is a standing item, so we'll also see one in the December committee. I'm going to move us on now to the next item, which is the biannual health, safety and wellbeing report. And welcome to Dawn. I'll let you introduce your report.
Good morning, Chair. I'll kick things off and good morning all. It's a thematic report in terms of health, safety and well-being. So I will present on the well-being aspect of things and Dawn will focus on the health and safety aspect. We'll take the paper as read, but for us it's about giving that kind of commitment strategically, looking at our risks and compliance, some metrics and data in there, and a big focus on activity over the last 6-month period. So yeah, I'll hand over to Dawn in the first instance to focus on the health and safety aspect, and then I'll pick up around the wellbeing activity. So thank you.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Chair. I'll, as I say, take the paper as read, but I'll just pull out a couple of pertinent points. First of all, let me obviously apologise for an obvious error in the statistics where there appears to be some duplication. So if I could ask the members to refer to slide 14, which is the accurate representation for this 6-monthly report. So what is encouraging within the statistics is that we are seeing an increase in near-miss reporting, which is very welcomed. And I think that this has been on the back of a lot of communications that we have been having very recently in relation to our new iteration of our report and how to report an accident incident near miss. The new scope report is extremely much more intuitive, and hopefully that has encouraged more reporting. And obviously, the more near miss reports we get, the more chance we have to prevent any further recurrences. As you said at the start, we have our strategic plan. We still have a ways to go on that, and we've highlighted there some of the issues that we still have to try and bottom out towards the end of the financial year. However, there may also be some crossover into our new strategic plan, which will be drafted and brought to this committee in February. The other point I wanted to just highlight was our strategic people and organisational risks. We monitor this very closely. I have a standing meeting with our risk management team, and we've aligned a lot of the recommendations from the BDO health and safety management audit to reflect any additional controls that help us to support reducing the risk score to within appetite. We've also closed the deployment of Surefire hearing protection, as the deployment has now taken place and it's now BAU. But we have created a new risk for noise-induced hearing loss, and that's in order to monitor the success of Surefire, but also alongside our new health surveillance programme, which is looking specifically at audiology at the moment. Just to say, we're continually working closely with our estates colleagues as well to ensure compliance has been met, particularly in the facilities management functions such as Legionella, use of work equipment and fire safety. And fire safety is a focus of our health and safety certificate of assurance this year, which we're benchmarking against our own standard operating procedure. And an update on the conclusion of that will follow with an update in my next report to the committee in February. And just since putting this paper in, just for assurance to the members, we've done a lot of significant work in the recommendation space for our audit. We've verified a number now of those recommendations. We're now sitting at 18 verified for the health and safety management system and 5 verified and in the completed stage, so 10 in total for the dangerous goods. So we are working really hard to get through those recommendations and make some really safe spaces in those areas for our officers and staff. And lastly, just to come to the point in relation to training, as you'll have read in my report, we are actually taking a real focus to return to face-to-face. However, to just play devil's advocate in this area, where we do offer face-to-face, we do find it sometimes very difficult to fill those spaces, and that's due to abstraction, and also we get a lot of non-attendance because priorities are elsewhere on the day. So we do try to offer as many dates and times, different times as possible to try and accommodate. But my team do feedback that sometimes the number that they're expecting to arrive on the day sometimes isn't at the full capacity that they're expecting, and that is obviously due to resource and capacity. So that was all I wanted to raise from the health and safety part of the paper, and I'll probably hand back now to Damien to give you the update on the wellbeing side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dawn.
Thank you.
I will focus mainly on from slide 31 forward in terms of the wellbeing activity. We've given an overview of the data, and we are developing our dashboard internally around wellbeing and extracting data from varying different resources for us. It's a real priority in terms of how we overlay data to get an understanding of what our people are going through and the needs that they have, and the stresses and factors that cause them to challenge their well-being on a day-to-day basis. Some of the key projects we're working on at the moment are around TRIM, so our trauma risk management programme, and we have an improvement plan in place. That has been really important for us, as it is often used as the first protocol in terms of support for our individuals after and post-incident. We have a number of different factors to that, inclusion of training and the expanding of our network of assessors and coordinators. But for us, it's also about trying to move to a more systematic approach to that we can analyse our data and be more in that prevent and mitigate space. One aspect that we have added towards our trauma risk management programme is critical incident support. And over the last 3 months, we have delivered 11 days of critical incident support after incidents within divisions. That has been face-to-face, one-to-one availability of counsellors on site, and also debrief sessions for groups. And that's really an important part of what we offer in that space. Since writing the report also, we've started to expand our work to look at a trauma tracker. This is based around the Police Care UK model around the police traumatic events checklist. So we're working with strategy and innovation on that piece of work at present. Real opportunities for us are in the national approach to wellbeing and the National Police Wellbeing Service. Our collaboration with Oscar Kilo, we're developing a contract of collaboration at the moment, and that will give us a real credible opportunity to benchmark against other forces nationally, but also to be involved in national pieces of work and really inform us in terms of how we evolve strategically and in terms of our action plan as well. Dawn touched on health surveillance and the proof of concept programme that we have developing at the moment around audio, but psychological health surveillance is very much within our conversations at the moment in terms of what we are doing in the space and how we can develop a programme of activity over a longer period of time to survey psychological well-being of, in particular, individuals, officers and staff within high-risk roles, but to look at the organisation as a whole. And our approach and our methodology to that is something that we're developing at present. Occupational health has been mentioned many times in terms of the different focuses we have around duty modifications. We're doing a lot of work around reviewing processes and neurodiversity. And it is something for us that's really integral that we work to improve in this space, challenge our provider, but also how it complements our internal processes as well. So we're working very collaboratively across HR on our duty modifications action plan, and the work that we have progressing there is really all in a bid to improve and ensure that we get that analysis in terms of root cause and then look at that prevent and mitigate, as I've said. Progress has been made in terms of our Lifeline Scotland programme and delivery of the training numbers are ever increasing around that, and we have facilitators across the organisation. Really important part in terms of developing that understanding of people's well-being psychologically, building that resilience, supporting colleagues, understanding experiences after trauma, and that is being strongly supported by our Lifelines colleagues, and we have some innovative piece of work there around development of a dashboard and how we manage that programme. We are based within organisational development in terms of wellbeing, and we're working really closely with our leadership, talent and performance colleagues around embedding wellbeing conversations, meaningful conversations, and wellbeing understanding and education across all of our learning products. And that's a really important part, because for us, wellbeing is just not about the services and a list of services that we provide. It's about trying to change behaviours in relation to wellbeing as well. So how we communicate that, how we get people to engage with it, is also on our agenda in terms of the development of a strategic plan around that as well. So yeah, just some of the key highlights in terms of projects, opportunities and progress made. I've attached the action plan as well, which gives that strategic oversight of all our 3 portfolios of work: mental health, wellbeing services, and the strategic and workforce. Yeah, and Dawn and I will be happy to take any questions relating to the report.
Okay, thank you both for that. It's again a very comprehensive paper, and there's lots in it, some of which we've covered in the previous update, but I will open it up, and Gary, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you both. Really good overview and a very comprehensive report with lots of detail in it. I'm probably going to stick with my pattern of trying to compress 3 questions into one and see how that goes. Firstly, Dawn, it must be really frustrating because you give us loads of data and then we go, well, that's not quite the data that I wanted, and then can we ask a question about some more data? And there are some sort of like incompleteness elements in the data. My question really then was to the scope reporting that you've got, because I know it says this will result in, you know, richer data. When can we expect to see the product of scope coming through in terms of that data and giving a fuller, richer picture that's there? And I'll pause there and let you answer that one before I come on to the other points.
Thank you, Gary. So it was just launched in June. So we're not even at the end of the first quarter yet to really establish the benchmarking from the previous iteration. But I think in 6 months' time, when I return to this forum, to the People Committee, we'll see a significant hope. And we've managed to put in the idea behind the richer data as well is not just that we get more reports, but it's also about the fact that the system itself is much easier to use. It's much more user-friendly. You only get the options depending on the drop-downs you select, for example, whereby previously it was very much an interpretation of what the user thought might be the response. And we've also got the opportunity as well now within the new system that when it comes to the line manager can reflect on it, give input there, but also our health and safety advisors have the capacity to make change where it's appropriate given the narrative within the accident incident report to make sure that it is accurate in terms of the fields that are being input there, but there will always be a conversation between the health and safety advisor and the user to say that this is the change that they've made and this is the reason why. And we also have the capacity now with the new form to do, rather than wait till the end of a quarter to do the QA, we're actually doing it now in real time. So we are consistently quality assuring that information as well, which again will hopefully see that the data is much more accurate, a reflection of what is happening.
That's great, thank you, Dawn. Look forward to that.
Thank you, Gary.
And then if I come to the main body of the report, just one area really of focus for me, and it's around the ill health retirements, and particularly the increase that we've seen in the area of anxiety, depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. And you know, I think Rob articulated this very eloquently when he was speaking earlier on around the pressure that people face and the change in something since the pandemic. And I think, you know, we know that policing has a greater level of exposure to traumatic events by, you know, significant amount. 3 to 4 is the recognised amount for most people in their lives, and we know police officers will experience somewhere between 400 and 600 traumatic events, and that latent trauma build-up, along with cumulative pressure driven by a relentless search for productivity and efficiency and everything else, I think does give a real cause for concern, and we're perhaps starting to see that come through in those PTSD, the trauma and the anxiety piece. And I suppose I've got a couple of questions to that end. I mean, the first one's kind of slightly counterintuitive given our interest in efficiency and productivity. But if I look back to sort of like pre-pandemic days, there was what's called those water cooler moments, even in between meetings or whatever, where you'd go and have that little informal decompression and that little conversation about what you watched on TV last night, even if you're walking to a different meeting. And, you know, I'd just ask all of the people that are in here today, how many of you have got back-to-back commitments in your diary all the time? And, you know, do you, and then how does that translate into what's happening to people on the front line whose job goes from job to job to job to job to the next one and the next one? And it's almost, you know, how do we create those water cooler moments, those informal decompression spaces within our, and it has to be the culture, it has to be the leadership piece, but how is that manifesting itself in the conversations that we're having in the organisation is my first question. The second one then is, given the increase that we've got in that particular area, how well do we understand the areas that are developing into those ill health retirements in that categorization, so we can target our interventions against those risks? That's the second bit. And then the link to that again is, how robust is our management information when it comes to things like ill health retirement and consideration of contributory negligence of an individual? So do we understand, for example, we've got somebody applying for an ill health retirement for PTSD, trauma exposure, anxiety and depression, who on 37 previous occasions has refused a trim intervention. So, you know, do we understand? I don't know if we have that level of understanding and data when we get to the point where we're considering ill health retirement, but it's like taking that data, because I mean, everything's there in the report. We recognise the importance of intervention, yeah, and it says it at 1.25 in the report, but I'm not sure how targeted, how well we understand that to make sure our interventions are really making a difference. Because I just, you know, I kind of agree with Rob. I think this is going to be a bigger problem unless we get a really good hold of it and have some really targeted and effective interventions that really start to make a difference for people, and actually makes people understand that they have a responsibility as well. It's not just the organisation's responsibility to take care of them, they've got a part to play in that as well. And it's how we create that and drive that through the culture. Sorry, there's lots of questions in there, and I'll be quiet now.
Sorry, if I could just refer to our to my HR and wellbeing colleagues to respond to that, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question, Gary, and thank you. And I think it is, you know, all of your questions are interconnected in terms of our approach, you know, and it's been mentioned many times today about the prevent, mitigate and undo. And I think our focus has been for a long time in that undo space where we're reactive, you know, and how does that look on the ground in terms of somebody having to put their hand up when they have a concern or a crisis moment, and then we react to that. I think in the prevent and mitigate space, I mentioned just a number of different kind of systematic changes that we want to make. And that's everything from our health surveillance program through to our trauma tracker, through to the development of a digital solution for TRIM as well. And all of that will give us that data that we can be more proactive and get into the prevent and mitigate space, where we can start to see the themes, when we can start to understand our people in a way that doesn't require them to put their hand up, where we can start to analyse that and start to be more targeted in our interventions. I know all of those are all elements that are in progress, and we require them and we need them to become more informed in terms of what we do in the future. I think they will make a change for us, and I think it's all based around that surveillance aspect of things. You know, that one thing's happening in a moment of time, but if we can survey over periods of time, we can have a better impression of what is, you know, what has led to the outcome for an individual as such. So I think we don't have it spot on just right now, but I think we're pressing forward in the right areas, and we're certainly looking from the investment from the organisation in the right areas. And in recent days, we've been talking around the methodology around health surveillance to really give us that more informed position, that we can be more targeted in terms of what we do, and truly have an approach that is preventative and mitigating of factors rather than being in the undo space.
Thanks, Damien. And Damien, as you were talking there around that, this might have been done already, but I just wonder, of the ill health retirements that we've got, have we selected maybe one or two at random and then done a critical review of the journey of that person up to ill health retirement that understands what the key trigger points are and if there's any intervention opportunities that could have been identified and were missed? I don't know if we've done that, but it might be helpful to understand that if we could.
Yeah, Nikki might be able to elaborate more in terms of the ill health retirement, but I know it's been a huge focus of work that John and colleagues have been working on.
So just to respond to that, we are starting to monitor the rationale and the reasons for the injuries on duty, because that's obviously where you get the ill health retirement, and then the injury on duty is the absolute indicator that something's happened. So we're starting to have a base level of knowledge in that one, but that will have to be built over the next year. And within that will be deeper dives. We've got a couple of cases that we are looking at just for organisational learning, but we will have to have more data and more recording of that before we can start to give further insights to the committee. But yes, we are starting to look at that yet.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
And Gary, I just wanted to assure you and members that everything that Damien has talked about, this is aspirational. We're not there yet. We're making that investment. You'll see that aligned in the midterm financial plan. You'll see that aligned in our 27-28 budget request. So again, I just want to manage expectations. We don't have that technology in place yet, but we are looking to get that technology and that investment to then get into that preventative space. And as I would know, members will appreciate, this is going to take some time, but I just want to reassure.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary, for your question, and Dawn and Damien for those answers. And just picking up on that, Rob mentioned earlier, the differences between Police Scotland and forces in other parts of the country in relation to modified and restricted duties. And it does strike me with some of this well-being work that is underway, there will be learning that we could take from elsewhere. So I'm just wondering whether you could say a wee bit about how you're gathering that intelligence, what's working in different parts of the country, and what we might learn while we gather the evidence that that you've alluded to that's now underway. Because we won't. There might be some differences, but there will be a lot of similarities as well that we could probably start to get ahead of the pack, as it were, without waiting on that data to be absolutely nailed down. Damien.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that's the key element to our collaboration with the National Police Wellbeing Service. That will enter us into the network nationally across England and Wales. And one of the key elements of that and the first deliverables for us will be to undertake their workforce prioritisation guidance, which is a standard that they have across all forces. We would assess ourselves against that and then be benchmarked against others nationally. So for us, that's a key element of us moving forward to be able to build on the good practice that's out there. The other advantage from the national network is that we're now around the table on national networks to see where the good practice is, to be able to do that comparative and benchmarking work. We're also challenging our occupational health provider in terms of that around benchmarking and good practice. We've actually a meeting coming up next week where they'll be joining us and senior exec colleagues, and that's a big focus as the good practice that we can build on from other forces throughout the UK who are facing similar challenges, but are maybe their actions are a little bit more advanced than ours at present.
So at some point, Damien, it would be good to know what that good practice is and how that's feeding into our particular action plans. And there's a lot of discussion in the paper and previous papers about learning, training and development. So how is that informing what we're actually doing and how we're supporting frontline officers to do the very best that they can? So I see Dawn wanted to come in next, and then I'll bring Caroline in.
Thank you, Angela. It was just to say as well that I also attend an NPCC Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee meeting on a quarterly basis. It is just in the last couple of months had a new chair who is very keen to benchmark against each other in terms of where we are. So we'll hopefully extract a lot of learning from that, and I could also bring some good practice to the committee, to the board at the next meeting as well. If there's any learning from that, we actually have a face-to-face event happening in October, where we are hoping to collaborate in a face-to-face manner, because I haven't met any of my colleagues from down south since starting at Police Scotland. So this will be a really nice opportunity to have those, as Gary describes, water cooler moments as well, with people face-to-face to gather some really hopefully informative information that we can bring to Police Scotland. So
that's really encouraging. Thanks, Dawn. That's great. We look forward to seeing that in due course. I've got one more question, Caroline. I don't see any of my colleagues, so let me just ask that first, and then I'll bring you in. I know it's on this item, but it's kind of related. So in the report, in HMICA's wellbeing on the front line, there's a few points there, but in the interest of time, I just want to focus in on recommendation 6. And there's an update in it. It's about the provide all line managers training that's provided. So there's a common theme emerging in this committee. And the target date is September 26th, and I know we're not there, but there is work ongoing, and the initial outputs from this work would be delivered by April 26th. I just want to check whether or not that is on target, and whether there's anything that anyone can say about the early results of that.
Yeah, in terms of recommendation 6, we have just in recent weeks been working with audit and assurance in terms of the collation of the evidence around that particular area. We have our ongoing training, not only in terms of wellbeing, specifically around lifelines, which is that resilience and supporting colleagues work, which is shown to be impactful in terms of changing behaviours, but also that link into the development of the leadership, talent and performance ecosystem. And we have a lot of wellbeing tools, particularly around meaningful conversations, that are now being included within the PMDP, etc. So in terms of the target date of September 2026 to submit our evidence, we're absolutely on course with that. But there will be ongoing work post that as well in terms of the evidence that will come. And I'm sure that will be included within the leadership, talent and performance report that is included, and we can bring more evidence on that in future committees as well.
Thank you. Okay. So Chris, I'm going to bring you in next, and Caroline, you can then sweep up on anything that you've heard, if that's okay, Chris.
Thanks, Angela. I'm sorry I didn't have my hand up earlier. It's just a brief point, actually, and I think it would be remiss of us not to say something about it. And if there's any comment in response, that's fine. But just on the certificate of assurance, and on the recurring theme there in relation to lack of evidence, lack of written evidence of health and safety as a consideration, and I'm particularly drawn to the statistics and to the impact of non-submission on high-risk exposure. So any comment in relation to that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris, for your question. Yes, I consistently bring this to the Health and Safety Board internally, that the certificate of assurance process allows us not only to see the gaps within the organisation, but it gives me a clearer picture or a bigger picture of the gaps within my team that helps to pull together or implement the strategic plan going forward. This is an internal certificate of assurance, so it's it allows us to evidence where the gaps are and then to push forward what those mitigations need to be to improve that. So it's an ongoing situation at the moment of us trying to provide the tools to support officers and staff to do health and safety, but also to bring to light what others' responsibilities are. So the last year's iteration of Certificate of Assurance was also very new to people. So this year we're hoping to have much more engagement with it. But I take your point that a lot of it is the evidence is not there, and what we're asked in the BDO Health and Safety Management audit was to have in each division and each business support area a space for health and safety within a shared space, because we don't have a digitalised health and safety management system that stands alone. So we're relying on divisions and business areas to have a space where they collate all their evidence, and sometimes that's not available to us per se as health and safety when we're carrying out these certificate of assurances. However, that's not to say that the evidence hasn't then been brought in place since, and the closure of that report has been verified. So at the time when we were doing this, the theme was documentation, but we've managed to revert that now by bringing in really good practice and sharing that across all divisions and all business areas. So that's the purpose of doing these assurances, so that we can identify how to remedy some of the issues. But the documentation part is something that we're working really hard on improving so that we can get that level of engagement.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just to make the obvious point, I mean, ultimately our ability to take assurance is obviously going to be contingent on your ability to take assurance. If you can't, we can't. So, and if part of that is because the information isn't being provided in the first place, then that's obviously an area of concern for us.
Sure. Yeah, and me. But we continue. My team worked really hard. We're a small team, but we worked very hard to engage with our divisions and business areas. I'm also being hopefully invited along to the extended leaders meeting very soon to engage with our leaders on some of these points you've highlighted within the Certificate of Assurance, and the need for them to engage with it as well, with the process.
So it's a really useful point. Thanks, Chris, for flagging. And if there's anything that the committee can do further to seek that assurance on, I think that's important, because embedding health and safety in the culture of the organisation is absolutely key. And we know that that really has to cascade from, you know, the very top down. So, but appreciate the work that you're doing. So I've got Caroline and then David.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on your point about benchmarking. So as we continue to progress our data, one of the insights that I want is to bring more of that benchmarking. So that's absolutely in plan. And then to give members reassurance, we are collaborating with Greater Manchester Police, who are coming to Police Scotland for a couple of days in mid-September. And all topics under Thriving Workforce, including well-being, will be discussed. So just wanted to give that assurance.
That's really interesting. So we'll look forward to the update from that. Thanks, Caroline. David.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to directly address one of Gary's points, that you're going to have to change your analogy to stand by the tap, because all the water coolers have been taken out due to budgetary constraints. So if we could note that, thank you. To be serious briefly, there's a line in this that Dawn said that I think is exceptionally important, and it relates to those who have been identified to attend training courses who subsequently do not. And I think that, you know, there will be any number of reasons for that. We could call it prioritisation or whatever, but the sense that I've had for a long time, and certainly it's been kind of reaffirmed today, is that clearly within the committee here, we are trying to ensure that the organisation is providing the appropriate training, support and so on for those who are trying to deliver policing in whatever capacity. Now, if that's happening in the left hand, but the right hand isn't providing the resource and making that resource available to do that, then there is clearly an issue. And I wonder whether, reporting on that particular fact or that particular question would allow, the authority to hold the service to account in that particular aspect of it, because the frustration that I feel, and I know the frustration from Damien and Dawn in this subject, is palpable. And I know that this particular forum is not necessarily about the wider policing picture, but let's not forget, any of us, that we are trying to deliver this service to the people within Police Scotland, whilst we are still undertaking 40 to 70% of operational capacity being lost for other functions. So nobody will be unaware of that. Nobody will not take that into cognizance when they're considering what is presented to them. But we are being hamstrung by the situation across the wider public sector in trying to deliver policing, and I won't elaborate on that. What I would just take a minute to say is that I've been heavily involved with Damien's team in the whole wellbeing piece now for a couple of years, and I think there is real potential and progress in the work that's being done in that wellbeing sector. Some of the challenges that we have raised around TRIM, for example, are being addressed in terms of people who have now been trained. The knowledge and understanding of that particular process is becoming embedded in the organisation. And so when you marry that together with lifelines, the critical incident support that's recently come in, these are good things to try and keep our people well and be preventative in this space. But as ever, there comes a cost. The critical incident support is a particularly expensive resource that we have. And I suppose the broader consideration would be, how are we going to maintain that when you consider the number of critical incidents that the service deal with and the choices that are being made about who is deployed in that way. The collaboration is, I think, the trauma tracker has got real potential in one sense, but again, what I think of is, how are we going to deal with the information that we get? Because if you have, an intervention at 10, for example, whatever it happens to be, and those interventions are made, then that will become embedded. But the question is, how does the organisation potentially deal with the level of trauma that operational officers have been exposed to, and how will it deal with those, the outcomes of those interventions? And I think that was it. So, if the key word in these meetings tends to be assurance or reassurance, from the Federation's perspective, I am genuinely encouraged and hopeful, because of the dealings I've had with, Damien and his team, that we can really start to have an impact here. But of course, that is all predicated on the resource that we have available to do the policing function and the impact of the work of others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. That's really encouraging. Just to hear that, and great to see that the Federation have been involved and welcome the interventions that Damien and the team are progressing. So well done all round. Rob.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say that we're really supportive of the move to engage with Oscar Kilo, the National Police Wellbeing Service, as Damien's outlined in that report there. I think that's a really good step forward. That being said, members should consider the extent and not underestimate the extent to which wellbeing and associated sickness is a resourcing issue. I stopped to speak to 2 officers in the city centre of Glasgow this week who are part of the community policing team there, who described to me the numbers on their team are 50% smaller than they were when I was there as a sergeant some 15 years ago. And the pressure that's been felt in all areas of the force regarding resources is what is impacting on people's well-being. So we can have high quality helplines and webinars and things like that, but if the core ability for us to do the job is undermined by the lack of people, boots on the ground, that then we're going to continue to see people becoming psychologically unwell. And that, what that looks like for my membership, we've gone from 216 on the first day of Police Scotland down to 145 on establishment this year. And we've felt the toll of that. And our biggest safeguard for our well-being is our workforce agreement. And unfortunately, the redrafted workforce agreement remains unsigned at the moment. I'm not clear why that's the case. And it is something that we are pushing the service to move forward on as quickly as we possibly can. But it's an area of concern and something that, you know, I would seek to report back to you in future months, hopefully with a positive story that we've now moved forward with that, and our workforce agreement has been signed, but an area of concern for the association currently nonetheless.
Thank you. So that's a useful observation, useful fact for the committee to be aware of, and we will be alert to that. So thanks, Rob, for that. Damien, Dawn, thank you very much for that report. As you can see, a huge amount of interest. It's a really full report. I'm sure we could go on and on. There is a huge amount in it. There's obviously a lot that you continue to work on. There's links with working of Gary's committee, Police and Performance Committee, in terms of some of the things that we've talked about. David, your point about abstractions and, you know, the impact then on services and so on. We've talked a fair bit about learning, training and development, and I think it is important that we'll pick that up at the December committee, just in terms of participation, availability, accessibility of training, and the uptake, because it really is a key area for us. So we'll be very alert to that in the future, but thank you for this report. I'm going to move on to the next, if everybody's okay. I know we've been going for an hour, over an hour and a half, but we'll maybe get to 12 o'clock and then we could take 10 minutes if that's okay. So the next paper, Vicky's been waiting very patiently, is the annual Forensic Services Workforce Report. So again, a really clear report, Vicky. We have all read it. So if you could just give us the highlights, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair. I'll take the paper as read, as you've said there, and just provide a brief update to members on this annual workforce report for forensic services. Now, this covers the period 25-26. And just to say, from my perspective, this year significant progress has been made with the development in particular of our strategic workforce plans. This was approved by the Forensic Services Committee in February this year. Also, our approach to inclusivity at our best, which was presented at the May Forensic Services Committee, and also the refresh of our Forensic Services People Plan, with absolutely clear alignment, of course, to our business plan, which is reported to the Forensic Services Committee, and our overarching strategy. I would like to say that staff, trade unions and Diversity Staff Association engagement has helped shape the direction of the organisation, in particular with significant activity ongoing in relation to what our people have told us through our staff surveys. Paul Stewart, Head of Function and Forensic Services, leads the people portfolio and also this work, and he's here today in case there's any other questions more in depth that members wish to ask in this area. We of course recognise, and I think it's really important to say, that culture change is needed, but also that it takes time to see real positive change. Another important point is we continue to work very closely with Police Scotland through the services back arrangements to ensure that we can enhance, in particular, similar themes to what we've been talking about already, enhance management capability, seek that specialist advice and guidance, and improve the people metrics reporting, particularly through access to a culture dashboard for forensic services in the future. Linked into the previous report, we also recognise that health, safety and well-being are important for us and our people, and of course remains a focus for forensic services. And again, we continue to work closely with colleagues in Police Scotland, the health and safety and well-being teams. So just to summarise, forensic services cannot be delivered without our people. They're highly skilled, they're committed, but often, as we've mentioned before, work in a really demanding environment with exposure to potentially traumatic scenes, information, images, cases. We're looking forward to seeing the results of the most recent staff survey, which is ongoing at the moment. But our staff surveys previously have told us that we need to make significant improvement. And that work, of course, is ongoing and is included in some more detail and appendix in the report. So overall, good progress has been made in the last year, and we recognise where improvement is needed, which is the important thing for us. And of course, we are committed to delivery of our people plan, very much focusing on inclusivity, culture change and health, safety and well-being. So I'll just pause there and of course happy to take any questions or feedback on the report.
Thanks, Vicky. Again, it's a really comprehensive report. It's a really positive report, but it's also a very transparent report. So I really do appreciate that. And there's lots in here as well. Like Paul, I'm on the Forensics Committee, so I'm getting a bit of insight into this. But Paul, I'll pass to you first.
Yeah, I've just three quick observations, Chair, because obviously we've discussed this at various iterations of the content of this at Forensics, and just 3 points in the strategic workforce plan, inclusivity and health and safety. So the strategic workforce plan, I think it's a different level from what we've had in the past, and I think the committee have said that it's just really good to see that when we agreed it earlier this year, it was a really quality piece of work, and it was really good to see that you're working with Police Scotland to help them learn from that, and hopefully we'll see better outcomes everywhere. Inclusivity, I know that was something that was highlighted in staff surveys. I also know that we have staff surveys every year, and it takes time to turn the super tanker around. Its strategic change is necessarily long term, and particularly to turn around attitudes and things. But it was really, really good to see the emphasis on that when we had that report up in May to forensics. So I think we're going in the right direction. It's just a matter of seeing this through, and hopefully we can get to where we want to be. The last thing is health and safety, and I really welcome the emphasis on trauma. I've worked in labs for years in the past, and I know that they're risky places, and you manage those risks with fume hoods and other things, cost assessments, etc. But the emphasis on trauma, I think, is something that's really, really important. It was really good to see you talking about building resilience there. And I think there's lessons to be learned there as well. So that's just the 3 points I wanted to touch on, Chair.
Thank you. Vicky, anything you want to add to that?
No, just to say is thanks very much for the comments there, Paul. And there's been a lot of, I would say, listening to the insights of our people, and as I said, staff associations, diversity staff associations, our trade union colleagues, to help shape the way forward. So it's definitely we've highlighted there where our commitment lies from that strategic level. So thanks very much, Paul, for the comments.
Thank you. I had a couple of, just one particular observation, and so I appreciate the scale of things is quite different, but there is a lot of practice in forensic services that I think colleagues in Police Scotland would, if it's not already been shared, I'm sure it is, then there's something there for it. I noted in particular, Vicky, the reduction in absence levels. Particularly in respect to long-term absence, and given the earlier discussion that we had, I thought that might be really interesting just to see the practice that you've adopted to bring that down, given that a lot of the, I'll call it the infrastructure around the support for people will be the very same. So you might want to comment on that. And my other point was really in relation to Your Voice Matters and the corporate learning that you've taken from it. And again, I acknowledge the different scale, but there are clear indications of that ongoing learning as a result of the feedback from the staff survey that I think is quite commendable. So thank you for that.
Great, thanks, Chair. Just to come back on your point around the absence and that decrease that we are seeing, I should say that as ever, it fluctuates, does go up and down, but we've got clear targets, both targets and stretch targets as defined in our performance framework, which we obviously aspire to. We do know that we have work to do, particularly like people have said earlier on about return to work interviews, making sure those are happening timely, that the attendance management meetings again are happening timely when they can really make a difference in terms of that early intervention. So we know we've got work to do in those areas. And again, key to that for me is ensuring that our line managers of all levels are aware of what the HR policies and procedures are. They know how to navigate those. They can seek advice and guidance where required through our HR support and Police Scotland, and they have the confidence as well to have difficult conversations. It can be challenging. So again, there's a lot of work ongoing in that area as well. In terms of the staff survey, I think Paul has led a staff survey working group with various focus groups, really focusing in on making improvement there. But I don't know if Paul wishes to make any comment in that area.
Paul?
Yes, I can do, Vicky and Chair. I think the staff survey working group has been brought together following the second survey, so the 2025 survey. So it was brought into play and is now has a number of focus groups which are staff led, and they are looking at the areas of the survey that are relevant to their particular focus group. So we've just recently introduced an additional focus group which focuses on bullying, harassment, victimisation. I had the second meeting of that this week, and we're seeing some great input and progress with regards to what we may wish to do at a strategic level across the organisation. So the focus groups are paying attention to areas such as inclusivity and belonging, leadership improvement, fairness of opportunity, and the wider culture across the organisation. So these are the areas that we're trying to be proactive in and trying to seek longer term improvements in all of these areas. I think we all know that there's challenges around an annual survey and seeing a difference in that on an annual basis, but I am hoping that over the next period of time we will start to see the dial shifting a little in the surveys, which is our kind of main area of getting staff feedback in a collective sense, although we do get lots of feedback through the staff survey working group. So I'll pause there, but happy to take any other questions on it.
No, thank you, Paul. And it is a longitudinal change, isn't it? So as Vicky said, change in culture doesn't happen overnight, so we appreciate the work that's ongoing. I'll look to colleagues, associations or union if they want to come in with anything. David.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be very brief. I think the key word in that discussion is scale. You know, none of us on this call, I don't believe, would see what's been discussed as, you know, particularly complex management solutions. They're simply common sense practices that, you know, the authority have the time and the resource and the commitment to deliver. The same experience. I was in Sweden at their NI, which is a really elite kind of response unit, 100 officers, zero sickness. And when I asked particularly why, it's the same responses that we got there from Vicky. So I don't really have a point other than to say that, you know, I think the work that they're doing is great. You know, it is clearly not unachievable if we have everything in place that would allow, you know, fairly common sense human interactions to take place with those associated impacts. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. Scale is an issue. It's about how you eat the elephant, isn't it? So it is different. Thank you both. I do appreciate that, and you coming along for that. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the verbal update that Caroline's going to give us on the development of the strategic workforce plan, and then we'll pause after that for a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Chair. So to give members an update, I'm working in collaboration with ACC Davidson, given the focus on local policing. Just for members' awareness, local policing attributes to over 50% of our workforce. And we have got a more detailed private discussion with People Committee on the 17th of September. There's 4 areas that I want to give a brief update on. The first is really we've been doing a lot of work around the definition of strategic workforce planning, which is a way of working. It's about supporting our leaders, our divisions, our departments make better workforce decisions that are evidence and demand led, that align with finance, that focus on skills, roles, service needs and plan change. In terms of how we're going to embed this as a way of working, we've been focused on our 3-year business plan and how we align with that, how we create design principles and focus on Police Scotland's priorities. And then in terms of the time horizon, we've broken that down into 3 areas. Short term, which will align with annual planning and immediate priorities. Medium term, which will be 2 to 5 years, which will align with the medium term financial plan. And then longer term, which really looks at workforce design, technology, the nature of work, the changing nature of demographics. And then most importantly, governance. And so we already have a strategic workforce forum. We are establishing a delivery group, and then we are looking at how we will embed both of those into the overall governance infrastructure of Police Scotland. So good work, lots of progress, lots of focus, very aligned with the work that's commenced around our 3-year business plan, the work that's ongoing on our midterm financial plan, and primarily focused on the delivery around PFOC, which, as members know, is phased into a number of phases. So that was the update that I wanted to give at this point, Chair, but I'm very happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. It might just be worth saying a wee bit about the work that's been ongoing since June.
Yeah, no problem. So the work that's been ongoing since June has been primarily around the areas that I've just spoken about. So we have galvanized a delivery group. We have done a lot of work in collaboration with Tom McMahon and his team around the priorities, which are aligned to the business plan. And we have, as I say, been working on what the definitions are. We've then been defining which areas of activity will fall within each of those definitions. So if I take an example, there'll be a review of SCD, there's going to be a review of enabling services. So we've been chunking all of that work up into those timeframes.
Okay, thank you. And just in terms of some of the previous questions, Caroline, in terms of feeding into this next budget round, because as David and others have all alluded to, the resources are going to be key for the future of policing, and there's a really complex environment that we're working in, given public service reform, the £5 billion shortfall in the Scottish Government's budget. What's the product that we might see for the end of the year?
Yeah, so the product that you'll see for the end of the year is really clear. So first of all, really clear governance, embedded design principles within Police Scotland. And then within those categories of time horizons that I've talked about, there'll be clear pieces of work that will be being delivered. So there'll be that short term, the immediate priorities that obviously we're focusing on in terms of the annual planning cycle and the 27-28 budget. Then the 2 to 5 years, which there are some significant pieces of work that will be delivered in that time frame. And then we're also commencing our work where we're looking 5 years and beyond on that future in terms of what skills do we believe Police Scotland will need, and how are we going to buy, borrow and build those skills.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'll open it up to other colleagues for any questions or comments. Any members first? If not, I will speak to Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Angela, and thanks, Caroline. I suppose I'll just continue the elephant analogy as we were trying to work out how to eat it before. That there is one still in the room, isn't there, Caroline? And I know you're relatively new to this, but this is not a new problem for Police Scotland. It's great to hear the progress. I'm really encouraged by the activity and everything that's going on. But I suppose, and I know you get this, and I know the whole team gets this, but the importance of the deliverables at pace on this, because it is so fundamental to everything. And this is going to be increasingly critical. And I suppose I'm relatively new. I haven't been part through all this, in terms of all of the iterations of where it's been to where it is now. But there is an impatience for the product and the outcomes of the work that's there. And I know you know that, but I think it would be remiss of us not to remark on that. And given the importance of all the work, this particular work, the strategic workforce planning piece that you are doing to everything else, I think we have to mention that and you know, acknowledge that this has been a long time coming and we need it urgently.
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. And again, just to reassure board members, that's why we've established the delivery group. And the delivery group is made up of operational colleagues, of analysis colleagues, of digital, finance and HR colleagues. So this is not about HR delivering, this is about the organisation delivering this. That group's set up in terms of a 6-month sprint, is what I've called it, with the absolute purpose of being able to deliver to what I've just explained around those time horizons. But the important point is that this is absolutely embedded in Police Scotland's governance against the design principles that that we will talk to on the 17th.
Caroline, and you know, we're really supportive of everything you're doing, and if there's anything you need, I think any of us would be happy to help as well.
Thank you. So if there isn't anything from members, I'll open it up to other colleagues. Okay, I don't see anyone with their hands up. Haven't missed anybody this time. So thank you, Caroline. I know that there is a lot of work that's ongoing, but as Gary said, it's the end product, and I know that this is a way of working, but it's an indication of where we're going, just as we've talked about in terms of forensic services and the work that they've done in terms of that journey that they're on in reshaping their workforce. And the ask previously was for milestones and timescales, so it's probably that same ask for the session that we're going to have in September. But thank you for that update, and I know that there is a lot of work across the organisation, because you're right, it's not just an HR product, this, so thank you for that. So colleagues, if there isn't anything else on that at 5 to 12, can I just suggest that we do have literally 10 minutes and come back at 12:05. Get yourself a cuppa, and we'll finish the rest of the public session after that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
ready to go again. Thanks, everybody. 10 minutes never seems enough when you get going, does it? Anyway, thanks for that update, Caroline, which takes us on to item number 6, the annual workforce size and shape. And I think Heather's going to introduce this paper. Heather.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. This paper is a new paper that we were asked to pull together. So I guess just before I take any questions on it, I just wanted to highlight that as part of our HR work plan and our strategic priorities for 26-27, we are working on a workforce plan that will be produced annually. And obviously for People Committee. So it will explain the resourcing picture, but we'll look at the here and now. So not to be confused with the strategic workforce plan, it is genuinely a workforce plan looking at the here and now and the next 12 months and basically showing them the resourcing picture of how we keep the lights on. And obviously we'll cover any changes as well to the organisation's shape. And we'll also highlight the priorities that we work towards as well within that 12-month period. So that is coming. It is work in progress just now. It has been out just to gather some feedback on it to see what we need to change, what we need to look at. So it is work in progress, and we will deliver that this financial year. So I just wanted to highlight that this is a very small version of it. That we've pulled together for the meeting. So it was just to highlight that, and happy to take any questions on the paper.
Thank you, Heather. And I acknowledge what you're saying, that this was something that was asked for and, rather than the detail that was in the dashboard, and it was to pull out some of the highlights, the trends, some of the changes and so on. And I think it is very much a baseline, if you like, for the strategic workforce plan, short, medium and long term that Caroline mentioned earlier. So I'll just open it up to colleagues in the first instance. Any questions? So I suppose an observation, Heather, that I think you're probably aware of yourself is some of the, it's difficult to see what some of the changes are over so it's the trends that we're really looking for. So I think that it might be worthwhile for a further discussion between SPA colleagues and yourself, just in terms of what it is that we're looking for. We're at pains not to ask for information that you in Police Scotland yourselves are not using. So it's a distillation of, the information, the data, the intelligence, the evidence that you're using to inform plans that then cascade across the organisation. So with that in mind, it's what are the trends in terms of a range of the issues, and I think the headings are here. We just need to make sure that we're not duplicating or replicating some of the information that we've also got in other reports. And maybe if we take it back to the priorities in the committee has, then that's our guide, as it were. So I think we can, if there aren't any other questions, we could probably note it. And I think that the next iteration, we will have had further engagement with you so that we know that this is going to give us the information that we need, and align it with some of the other data that we've got in other areas. Is that okay, Heather?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, clear. It's very clear.
Thank you. Colleagues, anybody? Oh, sorry, Rob. I can't for some reason pick up your hand. It's just behind your title at the back there. So anyway, please come in.
Yeah, I guess probably one of the comments I would make is around about at 127, around about workforce stability, and the statement that we continue to attract sufficient talent to manage attrition. I guess I think that would maybe be better articulated as we continue to attract sufficient numbers to manage attrition, because I know that there's been concerns raised around about turnover in the first 5 years and the quality of recruits coming in, and that shouldn't be a surprise as we have to compete for a smaller a smaller proportion of what is a declining working age population in Scotland. I just think in terms of members' considerations about the strategic implications of that, as we begin, for example, another pay cycle, it's something that's worth keeping a really close eye on, because the trends in England and Wales are a significant uplift in turnover within 1 to 10 years, to the point where it's undermined the Home Office uplift to try and get them back to 120,000 police officers down there, So these, I know that there is internal discussion in Caroline's area with Heather and the team around about some of those challenges. I know that they filter through training and eventually out to division, but I just think I think it's a very confident statement that we had managed to attract sufficient talent to manage attrition, and I don't think I could endorse it quite as wholeheartedly as that seems to suggest.
Okay, I think the trends are very important, as I said at the outset, and I think that from a governance perspective, it really is important that we get that overview so that we can see what the changes are over a period of time, and how it does align with a workforce plan or a workforce strategy. We're not quite there yet, but that will definitely come, and I take your point. The only thing I would say is that we had a useful update on recruitment and retention at the last meeting, which I think gave quite a lot of information and data on the both the attraction of the organisation and the ability to retain people as well, and the trends associated with that. I'll pause there. David, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief. It's just an observation, and I'll qualify it by saying I acknowledge the point absolutely about the number of leavers who exit, between the bi-monthly intakes that we have for probationers. It's just at 1.8 there, the numbers which reflect our full-time establishment at the end of March, been around at 16,430, and the force line, if you like, that will be around 16,500. I accept that also, but there is a point that comes to my mind about how, because we were under our establishment, that created the money, if you like, to pay overtime for police officers. I think that situation needs closely monitoring. And I also look, and I don't want to be reading too much into this, that 16,430 is around, well, it's not around, it is 70 below 16,500, and yet if you look at the next point about the number of staff we had, we had 56.2 full-time equivalent, which was higher than the year before. Now, I'm not making any point about police officers versus police staff, but it's just to let you know that I have an awareness that we cannot see police officers being replaced by police staff without an increase in budget. There is absolute value in police staff taking on and carrying out functions that do not need warranted officers. I absolutely agree with that. But if the position is going to be that we're going to look to replace cops with support staff, then that is fine, but it cannot be to the detriment of the number of police officers that we have in the country. Hope that makes some kind of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I get your point, and that's obviously something that Police Scotland will be alert to. It goes back to the strategic workforce plan, David, and what we need to see in that. So that, as we've heard, is a work in progress. So hopefully all of these will come together, and we'll be able to see that wider picture of things. But the change and the need for the change in relation to new and emerging risks is also something that I think you would want to see in this type of report over a period of time. I accept that. Okay, I think we'll just leave this one here at this point in time, and we'll engage in the next iteration of it. But thank you for pulling it together, Heather, and I'm sure it'll be of use internally. In the meantime, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Can I then move on to paper number 7, which is the talent update report, which Ethne, I think, is here to give us an update on.
Yes, hi, thank you very much. Nice to see you all. That's all right. I hope everyone can hear me. My Wi-Fi is a little bit dodgy today, but yes, I'll present on paper 7. This is an exceptional talent update report. This is typically an annual paper that comes in with the performance and talent report. The framework, as we are building it, is intended to create a cohesive approach to identifying and developing and retaining talent across the organization, and to connect that approach and the support of the right people with the right skills and at the right time to strengthen our succession planning and contribute to a future-ready workforce. The work streams that we're undertaking across the talent framework are individual, manager, and organization. At the individual ownership level, this is about talent identification, initially through a self-reflection tool, and also with talent resources and self-service enablement. And this will be and is already through dedicated digital resources, including SharePoint guidance and learning content. We're building manager capability and understanding and language around talent awareness, and having rich talent conversations and understanding profiling tools for talent as well. And at an organizational level, this will be later in the phased rollout. We are looking at talent reviews and calibration and targeted talent development. So we are working collaboratively with our strategic HR leads and local teams to shape our talent programs as well. If you want just to specifically talk about our progress against the phases, we have outlined those in Appendix A for you. So this is phases 1 to 4, explore, shape, build, and then embed and evolve. Explore phase 1, that's Q1 2026. This would be concept development, infrastructure, and early engagement. Pleased to report that that phase is now complete with the key deliverables outlined in the paper. The first being a talent survey release. The survey insights are included in the paper, and the team have used that to create the talent management framework in its draft visual form, which we have included in Appendix B for you. This sets out the purpose, the definition, and the colleague and manager journey of the talent management framework. There's also been a suite of supporting resources that have been built, and we haven't included those as appendix, but they are active collateral within the organization. So this is Nurturing Your Potential, a self-assessment reflection tool, a manager's guide, a draft rationale document, and also conversation prompts. We've also got a talent curiosity session, including with pilot groups, that has been launched. This is an introductory workshop that has been designed to build awareness, generate engagement, and stimulate conversation and curiosity. Most importantly, to create a commonly understood language around what talent is and is not within the organization. The pilot groups have commenced and it's now rolling out further, and we've received very positive feedback and uptake to date. Phases 2 and 3, this would be the shape and build. The shape part being the draft framework and policy assurance, the build being talent architecture and pilot planning. Both of these are on track with the early stage design of products and materials to support, including an initial talent review and calibration approach, program pathways, and digital resources. I won't give you too much update on the longer term, the embed and explore, which is post-build. The timelines are to be determined because it is an iterative approach, and we're making sure that we're taking on the feedback as we go through the talent curiosity sessions to build that for what will be successful for the organization. At an integration level, the framework is not being designed as a standalone activity. It's linking and connecting in to complement the wider people ecosystem and embedding talent management across processes and conversations that already exist, including the pilot objective setting and PDP conversation, the new launch of the PMDP, and for anybody who doesn't know that acronym, that's the People Management Development Program, which has been refreshed and is in its launch now. But a broad map of that integration and the points where talent will dock is included for you at Appendix C. we are focusing really much on what our anticipated impacts of this approach and this work is going to be. And whilst early focus is likely to centre on improving awareness and building a common language, confidence and consistency around talent conversations and decision making, we have also included wider aspirational impacts within the paper for you to review. And I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Ethne. I do appreciate that. Caroline, I will bring you in a minute, but I'll go to members first before I bring in any of the officers. Any thoughts on this? Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you, Ethne. I have to say, I think this is a really comprehensive framework and really quite an impressive piece of work. It looks really good. The bit that I was left wondering after I read it was, I'm not sure what this replaces. And my question then is, our leaders in the organisation will know who their talented people are now, and they will know who's got potential, who's got desire and aspiration. Do we have, as it is at the moment, a cohort of talented individuals that have been identified, and how are we maximising the potential that they present both for themselves and the organisation, or is there nothing at the moment?
No, it's a great question. One of the key findings at the early stages of the survey was that talent management was happening in pockets, and there were pockets of really good intelligence, I suppose, from the organization, but it wasn't a consistent approach or consistently understood language. We also know that in talent management broadly and theoretically, there are a lot of tools that organizations can use. I'm going to say the words 9-box grid, but we recognize that that's not necessarily something that's going to be useful for Police Scotland. So we've integrated this now into the pilot of the objective setting and PDP, which is performance. So I understand that's not referenced on this paper, but this is really about aligning it to the ready now, ready in the future. So develop in role, maintain in role, or develop into leadership. So it's not replacing anything concrete that existed within the organization. Rather, it's connecting some pockets of really good work and creating that common and consistent language across our management functions.
So will we get to a position then where we have almost like a taskable cohort of talented individuals who you could, give a piece of work to support a particular area of pressure or something that develops them and benefits the organisation?
That would be the hope and the anticipation, certainly through the strategic workforce planning element, that longer term capability mapping and workforce assessment. We would hope that talent will dock into that at that point, yes.
Okay, thanks, Ethne.
Thank you. Chris. Wait, you're on mute, Chris.
Apologies. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Ethne. And just to endorse Gary's point, there's obviously a lot of positive progress in this area. Actually, my question relates to something that Gary touched on there, and you touched on in response to Gary, and also in your opening remarks. So firstly, just some further clarity about the relationship of this work to the ongoing work in terms of strategic workforce planning. And secondly, you talked in your introductory remarks about objective setting, and Caroline's referred to it earlier in the meeting. I mean, it strikes me that it's really good to see this, but there are some basics. There are some things that we need to get right in terms of performance management, appraisal, objective setting, that are sort of preconditions really for effective talent management. They're clearly not mutually exclusive, and we absolutely have to make progress in terms of those basics if any of this is to fly, really.
I fully agree. Yeah, I think that an objective setting and PDP approach, whether we term that to be performance management, appraisal, whatever language is most comfortable, I agree. I think it's absolutely critical that we have some kind of consistent approach to that, and also consistent capabilities within our managers to be able to recognise what talent is and how we're going to be able to manoeuvre that through. So I agree.
Thanks, Ethne. Yeah, I mean, I think Gary and Chris have touched on it, and you mentioned it in your introductory remarks about the linkages. So I think that's key. I suppose one question for me was, and it refers to the earlier discussion on scale, where are you going to start with this? How are you breaking in to the organisation as far as this is concerned? And I suppose sometimes talent's not that easily spotted. You know, people get really focused on their jobs, they do a good job. How do we encourage that aspiration for everybody to be at their absolute best across the whole of the organisation? And how will this help, if that's relevant?
Sure. Aspirationally, I think we can always aim for, we want everybody to be doing this. Where we started really is we started with curiosity sessions and really worked on the premise of work with the willing. So the individuals who are really interested in learning about talent, understanding more about it, have identified themselves. We've been doing some engagement work at divisional level. Just yesterday, one of my colleagues presented at a division, and we've ended up with 28 people on a talent curiosity session. So that would suggest that there is, in fact, curiosity out there, and this is about the very early building blocks of what talent and what talent management means. We are aspiring to use the accelerated leadership pathway as one of the flagship talent programs. So we are working closely with that cohort of individuals as well in this. And of course, with the PMDP, colleagues who come forward for management training, it seems like a wasted opportunity to have people coming forward for management capability building and not to begin integrating talent management and talent understanding with them as well. We do have 1,822 people on the objective setting and PDB pilot as well. So that's an additional cohort who are already warm bodies to the idea of a sort of a structured approach to how we set development objectives, how we set performance objectives as well. So that would be another cohort that we're moving into. So as a defined cohort of people, I couldn't give you a list of names, but those are the pockets that we're looking at initially.
Okay, so I'm just wondering whether in terms of, and again, it is workforce planning, you know, through the data that you do have available or the recruitment analysis, whether there are areas, gaps, levels within the organisation where you know that there are going to be vacancies or they're hard to recruit to, and that this talent management approach would be particularly useful in addressing the challenges that there are there. So I was just looking for, I take your point that you're working with the willing just now, but maybe as it's refined, it's where is it going to be targeted for maximum impact in the organisation?
I think it's a great point. I do believe that that is one of the areas of the approach is to identify critical roles, which is why we're collaborating really closely with our strategic HR leads and our colleagues in recruitment at the moment. I don't have that list right now. That's not ready yet, but probably by the time the next annual performance and talent piece comes around for the next committee, that would be ready then.
Thanks, Ethne. Okay, thank you for that. Thanks for the update, and I appreciate that it wasn't a scheduled paper, so thank you for using it, for bringing it forward. But hopefully it's useful again within the organisation. Opening it up, Rob.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I guess to the question around about what does this replace? I think it very much fills a gap as it currently exists, and I think that that's a positive step forward. I think what has to go hand in hand with this, and Ethne's given me some reassurance that's happening, is you can't have talent management without performance management, because good performance is how you demonstrate talent, and that needs to be how we spot and identify people. My one caution around about this is, because we are so intensively hierarchical in terms of our culture, we immediately start linking this to promotion. Now, 89% of constables within policing in Scotland join as a constable and they leave as a constable at the end of their service. So if this just becomes inexorably linked to promotion again, it'll fail in the same way that my career has failed, simply because the only people that engage in it are the people that are seeking promotion. And talent management needs to be much wider than that. It needs to be about getting the right people with the right skills into the right jobs to deliver the right service to the public, not simply being an attractive route for people that really want to get promoted, so they all come to the input and then they all engage with that particular process. It needs to be a whole organisation approach, and I would encourage members to just keep an eye on that and make sure that it doesn't simply become another word for promotion and simply doesn't engage with the majority of the organisation in that manner. I'll leave that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Really useful point. So I didn't see whose hand went up first, I'm afraid. So go for it. David.
David, I think you were first, if you want to go.
Okay, wasn't sure which David we were referring to, that's fine. You go first. I just want to make some observations as I do. Just looking at the paper, there's no trade union or staff representation in the engagement list that's put on there, and I think it does say further engagement will be completed. I really think it would benefit shaping the framework having trade unions in there while you're shaping it, because we do have a vested interest in talking about staff's careers progression, their succession and development, and I think that would actually be a strength to it. I noted as well that the equality impact assessment it's in development, and I really think I would observe really there that you would want your equality capabilities to be shaping it as well, and actually shaping the design, and you'd be identifying that maybe earlier on than to a later stage. Similarly, that DPIA for the talent management it's not considered required at this stage, but I mean that would need to be completed, I would think, before the data starts feeding into the actual promotion or succession decisions, rather than being advised. And it was just my last comment would be on the final phase, the embed and evolve, because it's got no defined timeline. And I noted that the SPA's own risk register records it currently is outside appetite, so I think that sits awkwardly with your risk framing, and it would benefit from a clearer view on when the how that framework is applied to the rules. And that's my observations, Chair.
Thanks, David, for those thoughts. There's quite a few bits in there that we'll pick up on, and I'm sure Ethne and the team too. But really valuable feedback. I don't know what Ethne, I wouldn't not normally, but I'll bring the other Davey in, and then we'll see if there's a sweep up.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's highly aspirational, which is not always a bad thing, and I don't intend to repeat Rob Hayes' points, but that is absolutely critical if this is going to have any impact whatsoever on the way that we're looking to attract and develop talent. My question was really around, and I've read the documents as everyone will have done, but I'm still not clear what the plan is for the administration of this. There are a couple of mentions of my career, which Rob has given his thoughts on. I would echo them. And, I've been in many meetings where it's been consistently stated that my career is not an appraisal system or a means of appraising performance or, staff with, potential or aspirations themselves. So I just wonder, in the absence of a formal appraisal system within the organisation, can this thing deliver what it is that I would argue we would all want it to do? Thank you.
So it's a useful observation. I think it's one of the points that Chris has flagged as well, and I think it is maybe something for the next iteration of the update that we could look for that. How is it going to? I mean, I think performance is key to this. If we're doing good performance development on a regular basis, we identify those that are really performing, really could perform in different roles, have got wider skills. So I think it is fundamental. And I think, as Chris and others have mentioned, it is something that needs to be woven in, and Ethne herself mentioned that at the outset. So rather than go into the detail of it just now, I'm assuming, Ethne, you'll take on board the comments from our colleagues in the staff associations and the trade unions, and at the next annual review, when we get the update, then we'll maybe see more specific response to these points. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's probably important just to point out that this is extracting the talent from the talent and performance paper part of it. So the performance, the objective setting and PDP pilot, just in answer to you, David, I do understand that, but the JNCC was engaged during that process and endorsed that. So we've just extracted the talent from that paper for the purposes of this exceptional update. In terms of the administration of any kind of talent management system, we have digital tools. So like I said, the methodology really is about individual manager, and the organization-wide part, that's longer term. So that would be something that we are considering as part of any kind of investment into a system that we would be able to use for talent management and performance management, etc. And just, apologies, I don't know who brought up the point. I think it might have been yourself, Rob. But linking to promotion, I agree with you. This is why we've linked this into appraisals for all individuals rather than linked into any kind of promotion structure as well. Like I say, it's very early in its iteration, but yes, we'll hopefully have more concrete information for you at the next annual update.
Yes, I appreciate that, Ethne, and I do acknowledge that this is an exceptional report, so I appreciate the work that you've done on this and bringing it forward at this point in time. And I recognise that the links are going to be established there, that you're building on firmer foundations. So thank you for that. Okay, if there isn't anything else, let's move on to paper number 8, which is the annual employee relations case management report. And Nikki, it's back to you on that one.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, this is the first case management report we have presented to People Committee. And just by way of background, we had a new case management system that we put all our data into. So now we're in a position that we can do like for like analysis, and that's why we are bringing forward this report at this time, because we're able to actually do some analysis on our data and be able to give a few insights. So the report's there. I hope it's covering everything that we want. There's some reflections on procedural fairness, management approach, our trends, and Appendix B also pulls out what the kind of outcomes from the analysis and the work we're doing in this space is looking to produce. So hopefully that's helpful as well. But I will stop there. It's got quite a lot of information in it, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the paper. I will open it up for members. Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Nikki. So as you say, it's the first iteration, isn't it, Nikki? Sorry, I'm looking for you on my screen. I know we're not in a room, but it's quite nice to actually be talking to somebody. So I think, yeah, in that sense, it's obviously helpful to have this information. It feels quite limited in terms of the window that you're drawing on at this stage, and so our ability to see this in terms of longer term trends, I think is going to be really, really important, and also, I guess, to understand what analysis is being undertaken in terms of organizational learning. I'm thinking here about the approach, obviously, that we have at complaints and conduct, where we take some of the high-level data in public, and we're able to drill down on some of the more sensitive data in the private session. Absolutely understanding the point that we want all of our scrutiny to be as transparent as possible, but there is obviously a level of confidentiality and sensitivity to the detail, and I wonder if there isn't something that we can take from that approach in terms of reporting to this committee in the future. I'm mindful that the legal committee has also taken a particular interest in organisational learning in terms of the employee relations organisational review group. So there's something for us there as a board, just in terms of in terms of where the scrutiny's landing, that I think it would be helpful for us to pick up.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think that last point's really important, and the last thing we want is any duplication. So let's pick that up with our colleagues, just to see where that is most appropriate. Thank you. Nikki, anything that you want to come back to on the earlier points that Chris made?
Yes, just that the DEP had already asked that we join up in the org learning and what we've learnt from the casework. So hopefully at next legal committee we will be able to have a bit of a discussion on that, because your observation is absolutely right. And just, I suppose, separate to that, yeah, we are aware of the limitations from having one consistent case system for a fairly short period of time. So again, that evolution of data is really important to us too, and we'll be looking to report that on an annual basis so that we can form those patterns and give you assurance.
Okay, is that okay, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of what we need to do in terms of taking assurance that the organisational learning's in place and the impact of this in terms of risk management, then that progress in terms of seeing that the wider picture is going to be really critical. It's quite difficult to do it in the context of this very limited window at the moment. I understand the reasons for that, but it does place limitations on what assurance we can take.
Yeah, it does. And I'm mindful that there are different reports on different aspects of case management that go to different committees, as you say, legal, conducts, complaints, for example. So there is maybe something for us to take away, just to make sure that that is aligned, and that we're reporting and taking assurance at appropriate levels. Paul.
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 wee questions on this. The first is the one I was going to ask earlier about case management and the new employee cases being down by 58%. So what's the story behind that? The second one is I'm looking at grievance outcomes, and it's, my extrapolation, okay, it's a very small sample, but I make it that 90% of grievance cases have some form of positive outcome for the complainer. There's only 2 that's not been upheld. And I'm curious why that might be, when I note that grievances in the previous report earlier on was 0.5 per 100 rather than 1.35 per 100 in comparison to other occupations. And I'm wondering what's behind that. Is this a cultural thing with the police, that maybe they're experts in procedure and regulation and so on, and maybe that focuses them more? Or, I'm just curious to dig behind that a wee bit.
So in terms of the employee cases that was reported in Caroline, the wider report of Q1, the overall annual data is broadly stable. So there's obviously spikes in the data when people will complain through the year or put their employer a grievance in is not a stable pattern in the same way as maybe absences with seasonal colds or that. So that's what we've seen from the limited data that we are reporting, just to kind of acknowledge Chris's points, that it's really hard to see if there's going to be any annualized patterns that we see around that and what that might mean, because we know that there's pinch points through the year when people are busy in that, and we aren't able to establish just now whether any of that pressure on workforce that will come to patterns. So it's something we're going to have to look at, but we cannot comment on it at this stage. But we can comment that overall the pattern's broadly the same from last year. So just for that piece of assurance that I can give. In terms of kind of culture, practice, procedure, I suppose some of the learning that we're seeing is that we're not inherently seeing that there's an issue with the procedure. So if the procedure says do this or do that, what we are seeing is that it tends to be the kind of behavioural, the means and the ways we're going about things that are causing us more issues than the procedure themselves. And we see that kind of through the tail, that it's more about management behaviour. And if you look at the kind of analysis and the themes around that, you will see that some of the feedback in that is it's about the way it's done to people rather than what we are doing to people.
Right.
And I'll give you an example of that. So it might be that somebody gets a flexible working request rejected and is unhappy about that, but they're unhappy not because of the rejection, but because of how the meeting went to reject that. And that's where we're kind of seeing those patterns of we need to learn how procedure is one aspect of it, but how you feel going through that procedure and how you're treated going through that procedure is as important. The other aspects to this is there is a cultural aspect to that of workforce, that sometimes what we're not very good at is doing the explaining, so it feels done to people rather than that they've had a reasonable expectation to get a developed response back as to why the organisation's doing something. So we're working on all of those aspects in terms of learning. We have done grievance focus on. We're highlighting the data that we have got and the trends that we've got. And in addition to that, some of the work we're doing is to try and reduce those trends as well. So for example, 34 of the cases being disability or reasonable adjustment related. That's again why we've had that push into making that process slicker, so that it doesn't come to conflict between line management and individuals because maybe they've waited too long for an adjustment or something like that. So hopefully the initial analysis, and particularly Appendix B that kind of highlights what we're seeing, the action that we've got against that and what we're anticipating as outcomes, is helpful to the committee, that we are kind of taking an outcome driven approach to the learning that we've got to do. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. I'll open it up to our colleagues. Rob, David.
Thanks very much, Chair. A few observations from myself. The fact that this report actually exists is a positive. I think that we need to acknowledge that we're starting to get data and information on this, which is something we've called for a long time. Would observe that the committee paper is actually materially thinner than what Unison was provided at a JNCC recently. Specifically looking at grievance themes in that within this paper, they've been reduced basically to labels and count. So for the example I give is you've got management psychological safety in there, but the version I've seen tells you what's behind them. There's bullying, undermining, hostile tones, exclusion, intimidation, excessive scrutiny, failure to implement occupational health advice, neurodiversity, menopause, ADHD related adjustment. There's a key theme as well, minimal welfare contact and lack of support during stress or absence. So my view is that detail should be available to the committee, fuller than what's been provided here. There's nothing in here about the duration of the grievances. Only 20% of these are closing within 3 to 6 months. and the report we saw actually said the average duration remains significantly above policy expectations, and that is something that we would want to see addressed. We're hopeful it will become addressed, because what's been identified in this report is the problems there within management and leadership to deal with these. And so hopefully that, we'll be looking to the workplace relations, I'll get this right, I've written it down, workplace relations organisational learning review group, to see that those outcomes happen, that we do see those changes, to do that, because we need to see grievances and disciplines concluding much quicker. A lot of people are being left in the system for far longer than they need to. It's an expense to the organisation to have people, suspended for long periods of time in full pay when there's little to no activity on the reason for their suspension. So those are just observations that I wanted to make on that paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And David?
Thank you. I'm going to apologise in advance for the naivety of this question, but does this report relate solely to police staff? The reason I ask it is because some of the language that is used in some of the, the graphs that are presented as part of the report, I don't recognise them as being outcomes, if you like, for police officers. So apologies for the question being so naive, but if someone could clarify that for me, that would be great. Thank you.
The officers one goes to complaints and conduct. This is staff, David.
Thank you very much, and I apologise again for my absolute ignorance. Thank you.
Yep. So just to sum it all up, and thanks again. Again, this is a relatively new report. It's been flagged in various audit recommendations that the committee should, or the board at some level, should see the instance of cases for grievance, discipline and the like on the staff side, just the same way as the Conduct and Complaints Committee does for officers. And I think that this, you're right, it is great to see it. I think we're still trying to strike the balance between the detailed data and the emerging trends, and but you flag up some really important points, because I think that there is some further information that we need in order to take the assurance that these things are being progressed through the organisation effectively, having regard to both organisation and individual needs, and that they're progressing in a timely manner and within a consistent set of policies and behaviours. So I think that there's still a wee bit of work that we need to do. It's not dissimilar to one of the previous papers that we had earlier. So I think that it's great that we've got it here. I think the next iteration, we will build on a lot of the comments from members and obviously yourselves. Sorry, did I miss you, Rob? Did you have your hand up again? And no, that's fine. I just had
Chair, you're all good. Continue.
I had a sudden thought that I hadn't seen it. But you're right. I think that we do now really need to take on board some of the recommendations that came up through HMICS reviews and the recent internal audit report. So it's great to see it. Thank you for this. Again, I make the point that we are really keen to see progress in our receive reports that we know the organisation needs to take the assurance and take action on improvement. So we don't want to generate reports for report's sake. So for this, it is about seeing trends year on year. It's about changes year on year. It's about that improvement journey year on year, and it's about actions and how that impacts on the outcomes. So I'm sure over a period of time we'll refine this. But I think thank you to Nikki and the team for pulling this together and getting us this starter for 10 in terms of where we are with it. So I appreciate that. If there aren't any other points or questions, let's move on to some of the other reports. We're nearly at the end of the public session. So 9.1, we've got committee priorities. So These are really are here to guide. We had a member seminar earlier in the summer where we took the previous priorities and we really discussed what were the key things in terms of the Chief's 2030 vision, where we know that we're going in the wider public service, and the context within which we're operating, the changing demographics, the risks that we face, and so on. And the ones that we've pulled together that are here for your views today are the ones that we thought were really, really key. Obviously, resources is absolutely pivotal to the achievement of the Chief's aims and objectives, and that's why the strategic workforce plan, short, medium and longer term, as Caroline has said, is absolutely key. So it will focus on all of our agendas. It's a big banner for a lot of different elements. So I think, as Ethne's outlined, the talent side, the performance side, the well-being side, it's the training, learning and development. There's lots there that will, have to be included in it. And on top of that, we also have the more specific areas of well-being, the aspects of modified and restricted and sickness absence, which we've given a lot of time to, so we won't rehearse that again. So that's not to say that periodically there might be things that come up that we think we need to take a strategic view on, and I'm really keen that we focus on that. We're not here to get involved in the operational detail of how things operate, but what we need to do is to take assurance that things are progressing, that we're using resources effectively, and that improvement is embedded and it's continuous across the organisation. So that's really why we've got these themes here. I know that they do chime, having been at the HR conference again at the beginning of the summer, I know that they do chime with the HR priorities that Caroline set out with the team. So hopefully together we can really get momentum going on these. Not that there isn't already, but we can really see the pace increasing. So with those kind of introductory remarks, I'm happy to open it up to other members if there's anything that you want to add to that, and then anybody else that has got a view, basically. Everybody content? Okay. Oh no, Caroline.
It's just to reiterate, Chair, that this is absolutely aligned with Thriving Workforce and the priorities. And as I said at the very beginning, we're doing some work on our work plan to make sure that we're focused on the pace, as you rightly say, the delivery. Hopefully the members can see that there is a lot that we're working on, but we're trying to be really, really focused on that, and we're going to be really, really focused on outcomes.
Thank you. That's really reassuring. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to move us on then. Oh no, sorry, David.
I do apologise for my constant ramblings. If you want my initial reaction when I read it, the committee priority number 2 about well-being, the thing that struck me was that focusing on absence and modified duties are absolutely irrelevant, but they're both reactions to something that has already taken place. And I wonder, with all of the proactive work that is either being progressed or is in the pipeline, whether some reference to that in the well-being section of those priorities might be appropriate. That was my only thought. Thank you.
I suppose the aim is to see a reduction and change in both of those, David. So in order to do that, the prevention and preventative work is absolutely key. But I take your point. I mean, we've tried to keep it quite succinct, but we'll reflect on that observation. Thank you for flagging it. Thank you. Okay, so if everybody's okay with that, let's move on to the final public item, which is the committee work plan. And it's here for noting. Is there anything that anybody wants to raise in terms of what we're going to be looking at in particularly December and February of next year? Just for noting. Okay, Thank you very much. So that really concludes the public session. Can I just say thank you to everybody that's attended. Thank you for the papers. Thank you for the updates from staff and officers, and thank you to our staff associations and union for coming along and participating in the meeting. I do appreciate it. So thank you all.